Thank you so much, everyone, for taking out the time to be here for our seminar today. It's a joy to be able to see and have you to be a part of this and program. Dr. Godwin actually did an amazing job with the introduction and the first section of this seminar. And I particularly like the fact that he pointed out that there is a difference between communication and effective communication. And as he was talking, I just remembered that a scenario whereby I was communicating with a young lady. And, you know, sometimes when you're typing and you just leave your caps lock on, it starts, it's all capital, right? Capital case. So I found myself actually typing all what I wanted to communicate with her in capital. And when she got it, she was angry. She thought I was yelling at her, not knowing that it was my computer. I left my caps lock on and it all became capital case. So I was trying to communicate, but I didn't communicate effectively because just like one of the points he talked about, the 5 types of communication skills, I didn't realize that lowercase or uppercase actually could communicate different things to people. And that's why it's very important that when we're trying to communicate, we should make sure that we intentionally want to communicate effectively. So that was a great point. I really picked from that. So thank you so much for that. And like he pointed out, communication is very, very, very important. At the core of every healthy relationship is the ability for the people involved in that relationship to be able to successfully communicate with one another. Previous research and theories actually have emphasized that communication or the lack thereof it's a predictor of either marital satisfaction or you can say relationship satisfaction and even divorce. Communication can be difficult because the individuals or the parties involved come from different backgrounds. They could come from different backgrounds. They have different experiences. And sometimes their cultures are really different. So all these things actually affect the way that people communicate to one another or to each other. In addition, 60 to 90% of all communication skills, like Dr. Godwin pointed out initially, consist of either the facial expression or the body language or your eye contact or your tone, which is really very, very important. So when you're trying to communicate with somebody, it's very important that you intentionally think about it and ask yourself, what am I trying to communicate? If I communicate this way, what am I saying? Your tone especially is very important. You can be yelling at somebody and you're trying to communicate, you love the person. Of course, that is contradictory. So effective communication has to be intentional, like Dr. Gordon already told us. We've had the privilege of actually counseling a lot of families, a lot of couples, and we have discovered that most of their issues have been rooted on improper communication, lack of proper communication. There have been a misconception of things that were the couples or the individuals were trying to communicate. And that's why poor communication has been established to be the largest contributor of conflict in every relationship. So I am going to start my screen sharing as we are going to be looking at the causes of communication breakdown in every relationship. So bear with me as I start screen sharing. Okay. Moment. Okay. Just a minute. Okay. Just gonna take me a minute to just get that down up here. Okay. Oh, perfect. I have it here. Awesome. All right, I believe everyone can see my screen. If you can see my screen, please kindly tap a yes on the chat so that I know that I'm taking everyone along because I don't want to leave anyone behind. Am I seeing a yes on the chat? Yes, awesome. Perfect, thank you. So we are going to be looking at, I just have 20 minutes, and I believe I've used about 5 minutes. So I will not go in depth, but I will be enumerating the different points that causes communication breakdown in marriages. And the first one we will be looking at is wrong perspective, wrong posture. And I've seen that in so many relationships, in so many couples, in so many people when we talk to them. Oftentimes, one of them often feels that he or she is the standard. In other ways, they say, my way of looking at things, my way of doing things, my way of resolving issues is the best. I know, it's like they have that I know it all kind of mentality. So you had better listen to me. But that is a wrong posture to have in a relationship. Proverbs says that the way of a fool seems right to him, but a wise man listens to advice. In other words, a fool thinks that I know it all. It's always is on my way or the highway. I know everything, but really nobody knows everything. A wise person is actually somebody who knows but wants to listen to get more information to add to the knowledge that they already have. That's wisdom. So, in other words, in a relationship, if one party always thinks that they are the one that know it all and the other person doesn't know it, or the person has to listen or always obey or always have to follow what they say, it causes communication breakdown. It affects a lot of things in that relationship. So that is a wrong posture. In other words, what are we trying to say? If you want to effectively communicate in a relationship, you do well to listen to each other, because especially in a marriage relationship, the man and the woman are different, which I will point out later on. So their perspectives are different. So you do well to actually listen to the other person's perspective. There's something that you will always get or be able to learn or be able to add to what you already know, and things become better for both parties. The second thing is, this is the way I am. My partner had better get used to it. Yes, that is, I've heard that a lot. And that is an excuse for somebody who doesn't want to change. If your habit is causing frictions in your relationship, having the posture that this is the way I am, you gotta accept me, I'm not going to change my method of doing things, my methodology, will cause a lot of problem in that relationship. If you really value that relationship, if you want that relationship to soar, you do well to actually ask for help, find ways of changing that habit. Habits indeed can be changed. Habits that destroy relationships should be changed. It's very important. The third one is wrong assumption. My partner can guess what I'm thinking. Hey, nobody is a God. Nobody knows what is in the mind of the other person. So if you do not open your mouth to actually tell the person what's in your mind, there's just no how the person will know. I remember a lady saying, oh, he should know that it's my birthday and I like this and I like that. Why didn't he get that for me? Unfortunately, the person that she was talking about was ignorant of all those things. There was just no how he could know that this was what she wanted, except it was communicated. So please do not allow your partner to guess. Talk to them, let them know what you actually want, what you're actually thinking about. Another person says, or another posture says, it is better to have peace and not raise problems. And I know a lot of people want to have peace, you want to have quiet in the home, which is good. We desire that. But then there is a detriment to that too. When there is a problem in a relationship and it is not confronted, a lot of people like to avoid confrontation, but good confrontation can actually be good in a relationship. Sweeping problems under the rug is never a good thing just because you want peace in the home. That problem is just going to keep growing. And I want to use this illustration of a tree. We often know that a tree, if you want that tree to be destroyed, or a plant, you have to uproot it. When you uproot a tree, what happens? The tree dies, the plant dies. However, If you try to either clip it or amputate it, or sometimes we try to prune trees to make it look beautiful, what do? You're just only cutting a part of it. But does it still grow again? Yes, it does. And that's what happens sometimes when we try to avoid confrontation, avoid discussing or talking about the issue in a relationship. We're just clipping that tree and it's going to grow. It's going to be there, except we deal with the root issue. You talk about the issue, you uproot the tree. That is the only time that the issue or the problem will be destroyed. So please do not avoid confrontation. Don't avoid talking about your issues. Don't sweep it under the rug. Deal with it. It is for your own good. If my partner doesn't want to talk, why should I go through the trouble? You're a team, especially in a marriage relationship. And that's one good thing about it. The heart of man is desperately wicked. Man is so selfish that if you leave man alone, all they want is me, myself, and I. Every man, when I use the word man, I'm referring to man and woman, okay? So everybody thinks about themselves. They want what is good for me. But then once they realize that in a marriage relationship, specifically where you're a team, what happens to one person also happens to the other person. For instance, if there is no money in the house because of financial improper financial handling, you didn't handle your finances properly, and there is a problem, and there's no money. Hey, if you can't pay your mortgage or you can't pay your rent, what happens? They're not only going to kick one person out of the house, they are going to kick everybody out of the house. So in other words, what happens to one person actually happens to the other person. So it is not just about you, it's about both of you, because you are a team, and that's the reason you have to go through the trouble and talk about it, because it's going to affect you as well. It's not only affecting the other person. Another posture is, what is the need to talk about it again? Yes, you need to talk about it again because it was not handled. The issue was not, the root was not uprooted. It was just clipped. It was just pruned. So the problem is still there. And as long as the problem is still there, there is going to be conflict in that relationship. So whenever you hear the person bringing it up again, that means it wasn't properly, the issue wasn't properly resolved the last time. That means you need to talk about it. You need to resolve it. If you can't resolve it for yourself, go and find help, or else it's going to keep on cropping up in different ways, different faces. It comes in different, it shows up in different ways. And that's not a good thing. What it does is it causes a chasm between both of you. It keeps driving a wedge between you, and you keep going apart, and that's all of a sudden here we have irreconcilable differences. You hear people talk about that. That's because the issue was never resolved. They kept on sweeping it under the rug. They kept on avoiding talking about it. And it keeps on driving a wedge between them. And before you know there's a love lost. You don't find yourself loving each other anymore. That is why you need to talk about it. And one other posture is time will heal. Yes, we've heard about that, but then if you don't deal with the issue, healing becomes almost impossible. And that's why you hear people talking about forgiveness therapy. Forgiveness therapy is very, very important, because when you forgive, you deal with it, you talk about it, you forgive, you deal with the issue, healing comes. Healing is possible when you apply that forgiveness therapy. So we have talked about the wrong perspective. We have looked at the different postures that people present in a relationship. So the second thing that we're going to look at is gender biases. What do I mean by gender biases? Men and women are totally, totally different. We perceive things differently. That was the way we were created. There was a research that was conducted, and it involved the imaging of the brains of nearly 1,000 adolescents. And they found that the male brains had more connections within the hemisphere, while the female brains had more connection between the hemispheres. In other words, the male brain and the female brains were wired differently. The research suggested that the male brains were wired to be optimized for motor skills, while the female brains were optimized for combining both the analytical and the intuitive thinking together. And that makes their communication, the way they communicate, totally different. So another research suggests that the men, they connect from the front to the back, from the front to the back of the brain, while the women connect from the left to the right. I'm not a neurologist, so I'm not going to go in depth to start talking about it. But then the purpose of the whole thing was, the research was to decipher the fact that the way men and women communicate, perceive communication, receive communication differs. And bearing that in mind, there's a scripture that says, dwell with each other with understanding. You need to understand how a man functions and how a woman functions if you want to effectively communicate in a relationship. Purpose, let's talk about purpose. Most men communicate to exchange information, and that is really true. They are goal-oriented, so they want to exchange the information that will help them achieve their goals. But women communicate because they want to connect. Women are relationship-oriented. We want to connect, want to talk, not because we have anything important to talk about, not because they really want to point out something, but just because they want to connect with you. And that is who they are. So you need to understand that this is how the female functions and how the male functions, so that when you communicate intentionally and effectively. The second thing that we are going to be looking at is expectation. Most women share problems to receive emotional support. Yes, because they're relationship oriented, but most men lecture the problem because it's all about goals. You might want to, I'm just going to give an example with my husband. I remember oftentimes when I go to talk, share a problem that I have with him, he wants to solve a problem. And he starts looking for ways to solve the problem. And I tell him, I don't want you to solve the problem. I just want you to hear me out and just tell me everything is going to be okay. So you see, a man's mind is, I want to solve a problem. But a woman's mind is, I just want to connect with you, just be with you. I just want you to hear me out and I'm okay. Just tell me it's okay. Everything's going to be fine. And but this is not in all cases. Some cases, yes, problems to be solved. But oftentimes, women want relationship. That is the point I'm trying to pass across. Tasks. Most men are single task oriented. And most women are actually multitaskers. Yes, actually, there was a study on that too. And that study raised the possibility that male brains are wired for focus, while female brains are for multitasking. That is why a woman can have a baby. She's a mother, she's a teacher, she's a nurse, she takes care of the house, she's also a career person, she does so many things at once, but oftentimes, most times, men only focus on one thing alone while women are doing things. That is the way they are wired, but it's very important that for you to be able to understand all these things. Problem resolution, where they talked about it. Most men actually withdraw to resolve a problem. Yes, they want to go to a quiet place. They want to take their time to think about it, to analyze it before to find a resolution. But women, they just want to share to get emotional relief. And I think it works in line with an idiomatic expression that says that a problem shared is half solved. So I think that's the way women think. They think that once they share their problems, it's half solved. But men want to go spend some time somewhere to find resolutions. These are differences that we really, really have to look into. Vulnerability. Most men do not want to appear vulnerable by asking for help. Yes, it's about their ego. Oh, I don't want to appear weak. Because men always want to appear strong, But women, actually, most women, they tend to appear vulnerable to attract help. And that's why you find that some women, once they have a problem, they start crying. Even when they don't need to cry, but they start crying. Why do they want to cry? Because they know if they cry, you're going to come to them and ask them, what is it? I need help. Can I help you? Because they appear vulnerable. When sometimes they're not really vulnerable, just because they want to attract your attention. They want to attract your help. Most men are independent and avoid intimacy. And women, they enjoy intimacy and they depend on it because of who they are. Remember, I said men are goal-oriented, women are relationship-oriented. Most men they like to talk in public. Why? Their ego. Because they feel that the more they spend time talking in public and people are listening to them, they attach their importance to that. But women, oftentimes, because they want intimacy, they speak more in private. They talk a lot more in private than in public. And another thing that causes that is their insecurity. They feel insecure oftentimes. A lot of women feel that they don't have what it takes Remember, not all women, but most of them do feel that way. Men, they gain significance when they are out talking and doing things. They attach their values somewhat. It's kind of like they align their values somewhat with what they do, what they say, being out in the public and doing things. But women are not like that when dealing with issues because of the fact that their brains have been wired to focus. Men deal with the issue one at a time, but women run from one subject to the other. And I remember I always like sharing the story of a man that came back one day, and as usual, how couples are always supposed to behave. Then one was like, Dylan, welcome, kiss and a peg and a hug and all that stuff. How was your day? The man said, my day was fine. I was able to sell this car in the market and I made a lot of profit. Now he went to the woman, how was your day, darling? Oh, my day was great. I went out today to the mall to buy something and I met Gloria. Gloria was there. Gloria is so old now. Gloria looks this. She told me this. And after that, we went to another mall and hey, before she actually got to what the man wanted to hear, she spent a lot of time talking about different things, different topics. And sometimes I'm like, okay, what are you saying? So, but that is how men and women communicate. None of them is better than the other, bear in mind, but this is just who they are. So if you understand that this is how this person communicates, you're able to relate to them in a better way because you know that that is not who they are. You know that they do that not because they despise you or want to hurt you, but because that is their makeup. Understanding is a key to be able to communicate effectively in a relationship. Most men talk directly and factually, while women talk indirectly. We already talked about it. Another area that we can look at, another cause of communication breakdown, is self-centeredness. Me, myself, and I believe I've mentioned it a bit earlier on before. My partner's duty is to make me happy. Oftentimes we've discovered that relationships that have been successful have been a relationship whereby one partner esteems the other person better. When you esteem the other person better, you think about the other person more, you want to make the other person happy, you think about the other person more than you. That reduces a lot of friction in marriages because man, naturally, the nature of a natural man is to be selfish and all they think about is themselves. Unless my partner changes, I cannot be happy. Well, you're going to wait for a long time because oftentimes it's hard to change somebody. You can only pray that they change. But then sometimes you can also look inwards to yourself and ask yourself, what can I do to help the situation become better? So in other words, instead of focusing on the person, because the person might not want to change, maybe you can focus on yourself and ask for help and look for a way that you can navigate the situation, you can navigate the circumstances, pending when or if the person will ever change. But do not dwell on that because what happens is that it builds up bitterness, resentment, in your heart. And what that does is obviously you know that once you're angry with somebody, it's hard for you to bond with that person. It's hard for you to relate to that person. It breaks your bond. It breaks the bond of every relationship. So do not expect too much of a person. Rather find a way to navigate the issue. Poor child model, role models. I believe Dr. Ude mentioned that, Dr. Godwin mentioned it a little bit earlier on. It's so amazing that children consciously and unconsciously play out what they saw when they were children. In other words, the way they saw their parents behave, do things. Oftentimes in their new home, they do the same thing too. So if your father was dominant and the mother was a subjugate mother, oftentimes that is how you find what you find yourself doing. You find yourself dominating in your new relationship because that is the model that you saw subconsciously. That is what you see. That's why they say actions speak louder than words. It's true. Kids look at what you do much more than they hear what you say. They copy what you do rather than hear what you're telling them to do. So role models affect communication the way the couples or the individuals involved in that relationship communicate as well. Absent father or mother, if they are absent, it affects that child. And that is why every very parent here is very, very important that you parent intentionally, because the way you parent that child is going to definitely affect that child in future and generations to come. So you see, life is not really about you. It's not about you when you look at that, because it affects so many people. There are so many people that are linked to you, linked to what you do. And that is why we cannot act carelessly. You got to act on purpose, because your life affects somebody's life, which affects somebody's life, and it trickles down like a domino. The exalted father who is unapproachable. Yes, there are some fathers that it's so hard to talk to them. When their kids see them, they are like shivering. They can't talk to them. They can't approach them. And oftentimes when those kids grow up, they think that's the best thing, because they think that makes them a man of the house. Or yeah, and they do the same thing too. A nagging mother, and we know what nagging does, complaining and complaining and complaining. It's not the best thing. I know we said confrontation, but you confront on purpose, but not keep nagging. There is a difference between talking and confronting, a good confrontation, and nagging. And nagging can be quite destructive, because what it does is that it builds up resentment in the heart of the other person, because you keep on making them feel that they are not good enough all the time. They resent you. And the picture you can see on the screen, this used to be a man and woman. Oftentimes, what do? They always face each other, hug each other, and all this stuff. But see their posture. One is facing that way, the other one is facing that way. There is a break in their communication. Why? Because lots of resentment, lots of bitterness, lots of unresolved issues, conflicts that have not been dealt with and resolved with properly. The quarrelsome parents, not a good thing. It affects relationship. And I'm just going to quickly end. Past experiences or failures to resolve conflicts, we talked about it before, so I'm not going to dwell upon it again. So once there has been communication failure, sometimes people are a little bit cold, having a cold, they have a cold feet, they don't really want to attempt resolving, maybe because the way the resolution process wasn't a good one. The resolution process was a nightmare or a trauma for them. So as a result of that, they do not want to do that again. So that's why it's very important that that's why we're doing this, so that you can know how to resolve conflict and be able to try to, because conflicts are inevitable in every relationship. In fact, any relationship where there's no conflict, I question that relationship. Something is wrong, because you're two different human beings, two different perspectives. So you're bound to have two different opinions, but then the way the conflict is handled or is resolved is what really matters. We talked about understanding the differences between man and the woman, so I'm not going to talk about it again. And the last point I will be mentioning is unwillingness to acknowledge that there is a communication breakdown. You're living in denial. You're telling yourself it's not the truth. Hey, if you keep on living in denial, that is not going to stop the issue. All it does, it compounds the issue. There is a chasm between you. The wedge is broken. There's a wedge, and it keeps on driving you apart. And what happens is, oftentimes, especially when it's not spoken, it's in the heart of the individual, there becomes an explosion. And when there's for instance, when there's a bomb explosion, what happens? It destroys so many things that you cannot even get back again. It causes an irreparable damage. That's what happens. And that's what happens when you don't resolve conflict. It keeps building. One day there's an explosion and the person says, I don't want to do anymore. And they don't even want to try to resolve it. That is why when you notice initially, nip it at the bud. Don't just sweep it under the rug. Take care of it. Do not ignore it. Do not tell yourself it does not exist. That does not remove the conflict. It only compounds the issue. Do not blame your spouse and expect a change. It takes two to tangle. It takes two of you to make a relationship work. And it also takes two people to bring conflict in a marriage. So do not blame the other person. Rather look for ways that together you can resolve your issue. Waiting for the other spouse to make the first move towards fixing the problem. Be the bigger man here or the bigger woman here. Be the matured person here and take the bold step. In as much as sometimes it might not be your fault, that's okay. Because you cherish the relationship so much that you want the relationship to work. So be the first person to take the bold move, or else if you wait for the person might never do anything and the problem still exists. So be the bigger person, take the first move. And if possible, sometimes take the blame, that's fine, because you want to resolve the issue, because you care about this relationship very much. And the last thing is totally abandoning any efforts to improve any effective communication. Like I said before, it will not solve, it causes a lot of breakdown, a lot of damage. And the proverb says that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. Remember, the key thing is that a word fitly spoken, fitly spoken, it's like apples of gold in settings of silver. And that is where I'm going to end, because I believe my time is up. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Gordon, as he's going to take the other part. I believe we're going to have a question and answer segment. So I hand it over to him. Over to you, Dr. Gordon. Thank you so much for listening, guys.
All right, all right. So release the screen for me. Thank you very much, Dr. Blessing Ude. What a wonderful presentation. What an incisive, detailed analysis of causes of communication breakdown. You know, one of the challenges we have amongst counselors is